Hello, I'm John Cunningham, and welcome to another episode of the RedChip Money Report. For those of you new to the show, RedChip is an investor relations, media, and research firm focused on emerging growth companies. Our unique platform combines global multimedia with traditional investor relations, reaching investors around the world. Today's show features interviews with executives of two companies. First up is Soligenix, stock symbol SNGX on the NASDAQ. Soligenix is a late-stage biopharmaceutical company focused on developing and commercializing products to treat rare diseases with unmet medical needs. We'll learn more when we speak with the chairman and CEO later in the show. Next up is Unicycive Therapeutics, stock symbol UNCY on the NASDAQ. Unicycive is at the forefront of addressing significant unmet patient needs in kidney disease. With no approved treatments for acute kidney injury and limited options for those with chronic disease, Unicycive is building a pipeline that aims to fill this treatment gap and ultimately improve patient outcomes. After reporting positive results for a pivotal phase 3 trial, Unicycive is now preparing to file its new drug application with the FDA. We'll learn more when we speak with the founder and CEO later in the show. Now, before we get to our first interview, our quote of the week, it comes from the book Small Stocks, Big Money. If you want to invest in the microcap space, buy companies, not stocks. If you buy stocks, the daily fluctuations and lack of liquidity will drive you crazy. These quotes come from Byron Roth, CEO of Roth Capital, featured in Chapter 7 of Small Stocks, Big Money. This is a book of exclusive interviews with some of the biggest players in the microcap space. Get a digital copy on Amazon today for just $18. Now let's get started with our first interview today with Soligenix.
Chris, great to meet you. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Soligenix, a late-stage biopharma specializing in developing and commercializing products to treat rare diseases with unmet medical needs. Chris, give us a brief overview of your pipeline.
Sure. Our focus is really orphan and rare diseases, areas of unmet medical need. We really look to areas in oncology and inflammation, which we have late-stage assets that are in phase 3, as well as what's I think unique about Soligenix, we have a separate public health solutions business segment that's been funded entirely by the U.S. government to date, in excess of $80 million, focused on heat-stable vaccines for emerging infectious diseases, biodefense, as well as a COVID-19 vaccine. So quite a robust pipeline for a company our size.
Soligenix successfully completed its phase 3 study for Hybrid, and you're now preparing for an important FDA meeting to discuss the design of a second pivotal phase 3 study, Chris. And what can you tell us about the statistical significance of the results of that first phase 3 study?
Hybrid is our late-stage therapy. We focus here on a disease called cutaneous T-cell lymphoma. And what we do with Hybrid is we apply Hybrid to the skin, and then we apply safe visible fluorescent or LED light to shrink the lesions on the skin. As you've noted, we have demonstrated statistical significance in a first phase 3 clinical trial, very well received, published in JAMA Dermatology, and the FDA is now looking for a second phase 3 study that we're in the process of speaking with them about designing, and we hope that we'll have clarity on that design shortly and be able to initiate that study before year end.
You also have late-stage assets targeting head and neck cancer as well as Crohn's disease, plus a phase 2A study in psoriasis that is actively enrolling patients. What can you tell us about these programs, Chris?
Sure. We focus on the oral mucositis and head and neck cancer, as well as pediatric Crohn's disease. These are separate molecules, different molecules. One is an injectable known as SGX 942 for oral mucositis and head and neck. And the other for pediatric Crohn's is an oral medication called beclomethasone dipropionate. Our research name is SGX 203. There we've generated a lot of good data around both of these programs. And where these programs are right now is we are looking for additional funding, namely through partnership. So in a number of discussions with potential partners across both those programs, we'll see if if we do get the partnership or not. I don't talk about those until we actually have something signed, but a lot of activity going on there. And then the program in psoriasis that you noted is an active program. This uses the same ingredient that is in the Hybrid, and it's also treated the same way, applying the drug, which we call research name SGX 302 for psoriasis, to the psoriasis lesions or plaques, and then the visible light shrinks those lesions or plaques. And we've already demonstrated positive proof of concept in a phase 1/2 study in psoriasis, so we know the drug works. And we are now moving to enrolling in a phase 2A study where we're looking to just look at different ways to treat, to optimize the treatment in psoriasis. And we expect data for that study by the end of the year.
Chris, that is an impressively diverse array of activities your company is involved in. Tell us how large the addressable market opportunity would be for your specialized biotherapeutics business segment.
Across specialized biotherapeutics, approximately $2 billion in global market potential. This is driven a lot by psoriasis, which is a much larger indication, as you would imagine, not only in the US, but worldwide. That's in excess of 1 billion. And then the other programs we have, like Hybrid and cutaneous T-cell lymphoma and pediatric Crohn's disease, as well as the biodefense, the public health. These are all markets that are several hundred million in global market potential each. So I think quite a nice commercialization pipeline as well moving forward, if and when we get these drugs across the finish line with the FDA.
Chris, let's turn now to a second business segment for Soligenix, this one targeting public health solutions, and it has been funded, importantly, primarily through government grants. Tell us more.
Sure. As you noted, this is funded by the government in excess of $80 million to date, and it really focuses on heat-stable vaccines for emerging infectious disease, biodefense. And what I think is intriguing there is everyone now is quite familiar with COVID vaccines and Pfizer and Moderna's vaccines that required strict freezing for storage, for distribution. Our vaccines do not require that. So we can now have a vaccine that we can ship worldwide if need be. We have data in excess of 1 year that shows that we can store our vaccines at over 100 degrees Fahrenheit and they maintain their activity, zero degradation. So very important. And we are looking at these in areas like Ebola, Marburg virus, which you're hearing a lot in the news right now, COVID-19, as well as biodefense like a ricin vaccine. So quite a lot of potential here around this heat stabilized platform for the vaccines. And the nice thing, as you noted, it's funded by the government, right? So that's a level of validation. Government funding and getting those grants and contracts is quite competitive. So you're competing with a lot of other academic institutions, other companies and scientists, and we've been able to have a nice level of success there in securing that funding. So that has helped us really move the programs forward in lockstep with the government, but also build out a more robust pipeline than you would typically see for a company our size with multiple shots on goal to mitigate risk, a lot of a financial portfolio. So I think a nice aspect there, and also that government funding does help us manage our burn rate at times, offsetting burn and extending cash runway. So that's been very helpful for a small business like Soligenix as well.
Chris, I'd like you to take a moment to wrap everything up into an essential value proposition. Why should investors take an interest in Soligenix right now?
I think when you look, it's a combination of the risk profile and diverse pipeline, right? And I think for us, with Hybrid already achieving success in a phase 3 study and statistical significance, and having to essentially replicate that in a second study increases the probability for success extremely well. And I think that in and of itself is an important value proposition given where our market cap and stock price is today. But then behind that, we have a number of other programs, all generated positive data in diseases that we're developing. So proof of concept is there, biological activity is there, and now it's just advancing those through the development pipeline. And as I noted, with the public health, that's a nice added piece and upside or dimension to the company, where you now have multiple heat-stable vaccines moving forward with government funding that allows us to advance multiple programs, multiple shots on goal to mitigate risk. But I think the key, as I said, are late-stage assets that have already demonstrated statistical significance in the diseases in which they're looking to treat, and we're extending that. So I think that is an important element whenever you're looking at drug development, biotech, and companies that you're investing in is, what data have they generated? Have they generated disease population that they're looking in? To what effect? And is it a clear path forward? And for us, it is, because we treat rare diseases, orphan diseases, where there is not that typical competition you would see in large disease indications. And many times we're the first or in a unique position to come to market in these particular diseases, like cutaneous T-cell lymphoma.
It's an amazing story, Chris. Thank you for sharing it with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, to get more information on Soligenix, visit SNGXinfo.com. You'll see research reports, fact sheets, presentations, and the latest videos. It's all free. You can even subscribe to email alerts to stay on top of the latest news. You can also call 1-800-RedChip to speak to a specialist if you have any questions. We also have a free weekly newsletter you can subscribe to at redchip.com, featuring emerging growth companies like Soligenix. In addition to our newsletter, you can also order your copy of Small Stocks, Big Money. This is a book written by RedChip CEO, featuring interviews with some of the biggest players in the microcap space. Order your copy at Amazon.com today for just $18. Now let's move on to our next interview today with Unicycive Therapeutics.
Shalab, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Craig, for having me.
Shalab, for viewers new to the story, would you introduce Unicycive, please?
Absolutely. We are a clinical stage biotechnology company based out of Silicon Valley, California. We have 2 drugs in development. Our lead drug is a drug that helps patients, that has a potential to help patients who have high phosphate. High phosphate happens to patients who have chronic kidney disease, more specifically in chronic kidney disease stage 5, which is also called as end-stage renal disease, ESRD, or also simply known as patients who are on dialysis. So lead drug is Renosort, which is expected to file for NDA approval this year and is for treatment of high phosphate. We have a second drug that is in clinical development. Currently, it's undergoing phase 1 clinical trial in the United Kingdom, and it is being evaluated for both acute as well as chronic kidney disease. Our entire company is focused on chronic kidney disease or kidney disease in general. The first drug focuses on chronic part. The second drug can work both in acute and chronic kidney disease. And last but not the least, Craig, just to give you a context, roughly 14% of the US population suffers from chronic kidney disease. It's a pretty big market opportunity, but more importantly, it affects a lot of people who don't even know that they have chronic kidney disease.
Could you be more specific about the size of that market opportunity, Shalab, both for the chronic and the acute problems?
Let's talk about chronic kidney disease first, because that's a drug, our lead drug addresses that, and specifically in chronic kidney disease, hyperphosphatemia market. So phosphate level is something that most of us don't really worry about it. If a kidney function is normal, phosphate is not a problem to be excreted or to be taken out from the body. But when the kidneys, which are filtering part of the body, do not work properly, they end up in having phosphate not being excreted. And it is not the phosphate that is an issue, Craig, we are trying to solve for. Phosphate combines with calcium and ends up causing people to die from heart attack because calcium and phosphate combination or product ends up in causing atherosclerosis, which is simple term for coronary artery disease, just the same way as a patient would experience thickening of arteries that you would see by having someone either having very high cholesterol or having a very bad diet, as in eating a steak, for example, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I give you that example just to make the point. The phosphate becomes an issue in patients with chronic kidney disease, and phosphate also causes bone problem. So going back to the market opportunity, hyperphosphatemia market in the global market is roughly $2.5 billion, $1.25 billion in the US, and $1.25 billion in rest parts of the world. The US market, $1.25 billion. There are other drugs on the market, and we can talk more specifically about what does our drug do, how does it address the unmet medical need.
Shalab, Unicycive has just completed a bioequivalence trial for Renasorb. Tell us about the results of that trial and what are the next steps in commercialization?
Yes, Craig. So as you recall, this was the only clinical study that we needed to run in order to be able to file our NDA. The clinical results, the clinical trial results showed that our drug is similar to the comparator drug, which is another drug based out of lanthanum called fosrenol. And in order for us to have met the bioequivalence study, we had to show that when our drug is given to healthy volunteers and we evaluate urinary phosphate level, it is similar to that what you would expect from fosrenol, which is the comparator drug, and we achieved those results. In the back of those results, with a successful completion of BE study, we completed a financing, as you also are aware of it, and this allows us to be able to file our NDA in the next couple of weeks to a couple of months.
Shalab, we've been talking a lot about Renasorb so far. I want to turn quickly to your other drug in the pipeline, UNY494.
Absolutely. UNY494 is a drug which is works on mitochondria. Think about mitochondria as a part of the cell that an energy storage system or energy storage capacitor. So just like in your house, if you don't have electricity, none of your devices, iPhone or internet or television will work. Similarly, if the cells do not have mitochondria or not working proper mitochondria, they will have dysfunction. UNY494 addresses, it stabilizes mitochondria. It addresses acute kidney injury and also chronic kidney disease. The differentiation between acute and chronic is somewhat artificial, if you will, because if we have a patient or a person who has kidney dysfunction for first 90 days, we call that acute kidney injury, but if it continues on for a much longer period of time, we call it chronic kidney disease. The second drug, UNY494, just started a clinical development program in the UK. We are running a phase 1 healthy volunteer study, and this way we can evaluate and see how the drug performs. We have a human biological data in terms of the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamic, talking more in general terms. What it means, we are trying to see how the drug goes into the body and dissipates. There's a lot of clinical data from the drug as it relates to the UNY494 is a pro-drug, but what it originally released is a drug called nicorandil. So there is a lot of data on nicorandil already available. We are super excited for this drug. It's taken a bit of time to get into clinic, but we start to see the clinical trial data in the next few days, and we expect to have phase 1 completed by end of this year.
Shalab, you mentioned already some of the key players on your team, such as Doug Dramasic. Give us an introduction of yourself as well as the other people that make Unicycive the great company that it is.
Thanks, Greg. So by way of background, I'm a physician, trained practice in New York with a decade of clinical training experience. I went to work on Wall Street as a sell-side analyst covering biotech companies like ours, and also covered pharma companies like Pfizer, Merck, Schering-Plough, and Lilly. I then went to work for Genentech and Corporate Strategy Group and then moved on to form companies before starting Unicycive. My experience and background has been that a product in itself is not enough. You need 3 things for this to work. You need the support of investors who are committed to see their products and companies succeed. We have that. And number 2, you need a commitment from the team that is single-minded and focused on execution. We have that. And number 3, you have to have a great product. If you don't have a great product, then you struggle with having a great team and investors, but you then have to go and find new products. The third part, which I mentioned to you, Renasorb was always a great product, but having spent last two plus years as a public company, we have now got to the point where we can file the drug for FDA approval.
All right, Shalab, we've covered a lot of ground here. To wrap up, put it in a nutshell for us. Why should an investor take an interest in Unicycive right now?
Craig, there are probably three reasons or 3 summary points that I would like to emphasize. Number 1, we have a very late-stage drug. In drug development, people have drugs that are going through phase 1 trial, phase 2 trial. We have a very late-stage drug which has no clinical risk at the moment. We are in the process of regulatory filing. The clinical trials were completed end of last year, as I mentioned earlier. So number 1, there is a drug which is in very, very late stage in clinical development. We are about to file the process with FDA, NDA filing. The NDA filing takes us for approval, potential approval next year. So that's number 1. Number 2, in the current economy, or for that matter, any economy, for a small company, the challenge is that investors feel that the company did very well in terms of clinical program, but then there is a challenge about capital markets. We have no financing risk or limited financing risk because we have already commitment for another $100 million. As we achieve milestones, that money comes in, and that's number two part. Number three part, most companies are single product companies, single product focused company, and the entire value of the company relies on one drug. And that perhaps is true in some way because even though we have the second drug, that has not seen much of airtime. Our entire focus from an investor's point of view has been the first drug. But I'll just reiterate, the second drug is now in clinic. We are focused on developing our second drug. And the second drug is pretty exciting because it addresses a problem that currently there is no approved treatment, and that problem or that indication is acute kidney injury. Would love to talk more about it. And by the time Renosor goes for FDA approval, the second drug starts to go into the end of phase 1, and next year it will be in phase 2 trials. So those are the 3 points that I would like to summarize. Great product in a very big market opportunity with very limited risk for approval. Well-financed company. And number 3, a company that has got 2 exciting products, not just one.
Now to get more information on Unicycive Therapeutics, visit UNCYinfo.com. You'll see research reports, fact sheets, presentations, and the latest videos. It's all free. You can even subscribe to email alerts to stay on top of the latest news. You can also call 1-800-RedChip to speak to a specialist if you have any questions. We also have a free weekly newsletter you can subscribe to at redchip.com featuring emerging growth companies like Unicycive Therapeutics. In addition to our newsletter, you can also order your copy of Small Stocks, Big Money. This is a book written by RedChip CEO featuring interviews with some of the biggest players in the microcap space. Order your copy at Amazon.com today for just $18. Now let's recap the companies you met today. First, you met Soligenix, stock symbol SNGX on the NASDAQ. Soligenix is a late-stage biopharmaceutical company offering a robust pipeline of multiple fast-track and orphan-designated products with the potential for significant commercial returns of approximately $2 billion in global annual sales. The positive, statistically significant results achieved in the company's phase 3 study of Highbright have been published in JAMA Dermatology, and Soligenix is now preparing to meet with the FDA to discuss the design of the second confirmatory phase 3 study. Learn more about this exciting opportunity by visiting SNGXinfo.com today. Then you met Unicycive Therapeutics, stock symbol UNCY on the NASDAQ. Unicycive Therapeutics is at the forefront of addressing significant unmet patient needs in kidney disease. With multiple near-term catalysts, Unicycive represents a compelling opportunity in the kidney disease space with a valuation that still reflects a significant discount to its peers. Learn more at UNCYinfo.com. Again, if you have any questions about any of the companies featured on today's show, call us at 1-800-RedChip or email us at info@redchip.com. In closing, remember, while small caps can provide significant gains, you must be prepared for the downside. Small cap stocks are among the most volatile asset class. Some of the companies featured on this show are RedChip client companies, and we may own stock in these companies. So please always read our disclosures at redchip.com.
Hello, my name is Chris Shaber, President and CEO of Soligenix. We are a publicly traded NASDAQ listed company. Our symbol is SNGX. Soligenix is a late-stage biopharmaceutical company focused on developing and commercializing products to treat rare diseases and areas of unmet medical need. What makes Soligenix unique is that we have 2-segment business, a specialized biotherapeutics focused on oncology and inflammation, and a separate public health solutions segment funded entirely by the US government in excess of $80 million to date, focused on heat-stable vaccines for emerging infectious diseases and biodefense. Soligenix is a late-stage company, as I noted, with phase 3 assets. Our lead program, Hybrid, in the treatment of cutaneous T-cell lymphoma, has already demonstrated positive and statistically significant results in a phase 3 clinical trial published in JAMA Dermatology. And we are now embarking on a second phase 3, interacting with the FDA on that design to conduct that study and replicating what we've done previously. We expect that study to initiate before year end or early next. And behind that, we have a number of programs. We have a phase 2A study in psoriasis using the same active ingredient Hybrid that's actively enrolling patients. And we expect results there in the second half of this year. And then a number of programs that are generating data throughout the year. Our rare disease pipeline has potential to be in excess of $2 billion global market potential across both our specialized biotherapeutics and public health. So very unique opportunities with multiple shots on goal to mitigate risk like a financial portfolio. We also have a strong management team and board with diverse experience in both business, finance, and drug development, moving the company forward with many years' experience building and growing biotech companies. I've been in the industry for over 32 years, developing drugs specifically in the orphan disease space. So again, strong experience both at the management level as well as the board to move the company forward. So I urge you to take a closer look if you have time and interest, and check out our website at www.soligenix.com.